There's one Apollo search filter that I think is disturbingly underrated, and we're going to go through that now. And first, I'm going to tell you why it's extremely underrated. Let's say you want to go after any sort of local business that does manufacturing, and the reason you want to go after them is because of the process they do, not the business they say they are, right? And so processes inform the needs of a business a lot more than the type of business they are, right? So it's not necessarily that relevant that someone's a B2B SaaS. It becomes more relevant based on some of the job titles they have on their team. For instance, a CRO. Once they have a CRO on the team, you're looking at a company that's far more inclined to care about certain processes, are likely doing certain processes, and based on those certain processes, they may be more or less qualified, right? So this is the most powerful filter you can use in Apollo. It's actually quite disgustingly powerful. And I'm also going to drop one other hint of value when it comes to prospecting for manufacturing companies and companies with physical locations when you're not starting from Google Maps. And that's the location of the business itself does not matter. A business in China can have manufacturing set up in the United States. A business in Europe can. A business in South America can. A business in Africa can, so on and so forth. And if what you care about is what's happening at that US facility, then you should pay far less attention to the headquarters of that business. And this can be applicable downstream. Okay. Something to think about, something to keep in mind. Now, why is this so powerful? Well, the reason this is so powerful is because as we go through these businesses, one of the things we're going to notice is that they fall into a wide range of different kind of industries. And certainly there's going to be areas where we need to kind of dial this back. But one of the things you're going to notice is that when we go through some of these, for instance, like Lime AI, they're talking about themselves being batteries, analytics, renewables, energy storage, and they're not mentioning anything to do with what's called like sensitive electronic manufacturing. And so that would be like your PCB, your SMT. And companies have certain qualification codes that can create associations with these things, but you'll end up with a list of about 10,000. And some companies will use like very general terms, like they're doing electronics manufacturing or electronic components. So if you want to identify the processes that a company is using and the things they care about, you can use the roles on their team. And Apollo provides a filter to do this at the company level. So this search here is, an additional 3,100 businesses that have PCB designers, PCB engineers, SMT technicians, and anyone with printed circuit board directly in their title. And the way you can find these sorts of titles is to look at your best company, click on it, right? So I know this company. I know it's a qualified company, and so you can click on and just look and scroll through the job titles that exist on that team. Or if you want to, you can get AI to do this for you. Or in other cases, you could use Instant Data Scraper and turn it into a CSV, and then have Claude Code or something analyze that CSV. And so as we go through this, you're noticing that there's other job titles that may be relevant, right? Like there was something like a signal integrity engineer, and that sounds like it could actually have a lot to do with what we do. And as you go through this process, it's, as always, iterative, but this is a tool that can allow us to identify thousands more companies that we otherwise wouldn't have by focusing on the job titles that are in control of specific processes. If you wanted to find out if a company does painting, spraying, see if they have a painter on the team, right? It's simple, but highly, highly effective. And it fills in the gaps for a lot of companies that lack. And you can see here, Colorado, by the way. This is a company that would have been disqualified because their headquarters is in India, but they do manufacture in Colorado. And so, like a lot of companies, especially local ones, keep their websites extremely generic, out of date. They don't necessarily talk about what they do in the most specificity. They aren't necessarily the most in the news. And so it can be a challenge to identify all the companies in your total addressable market. But this is a highly, 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 highly effective way to make sure that these companies exist in your market. And so if you wanted to make sure they existed in your market and actually do the thing in the right location, all you have to do is then go to the people tab, right? Find people, and make sure that these job titles, right, these individual contributors that are making the thing, they're going to work every day, are in the jurisdiction you care about, the location you care about. So if you have someone who does PCB assembly and they're a technician, right, and they do it in the United States, they're not flying to headquarters in India to do that. They do that. They have a facility there. you can make that inference, right? Quite reasonably. So please use this filter. There's so many use cases. Check to see if there's, an individual contributor that is highly different from others on the team. For instance, you can identify if someone cares about, CRO, if they have a CRO person on the team, right? You can justify that quite quickly. If you're using Clay, you can do this in a different way. If you want to find out if anyone's, working on something like retrieval augmented generation, something very specific as an AI process, you could use that inside of their entire LinkedIn page to see if it's mentioned at all. And if it is, you could say, okay, these guys have some sort of care about retrieval augmented generation. And you could hone that down to the bio or the about section or the experience to make it more specific. But this can be a way to narrow down your list based on process, not generic titling. And yeah, that Lime AI company we never would have found because they were classified as a battery company, and some of these are classified as design companies. Imagine using that as your filter.